Welcome to Comic Sans, everyone, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, a comic book enthusiast, reviewer. I think I talked about eating them last week. No, I talked about tasting them, sniffing them, snorting them. I chopped my comics up into little piles of sawdust and I inhaled them straight through both nostrils.
And I'm Nat, and just like Yen, I too consume substances. Today I am day drinking. In fact, Yen and I are both drinking. You know, we got to be honest about this.
Yeah, but the sun has set where I'm in the world, so it's okay for me.
It's 12:30 p.m. where I am, and I'm drinking a Little Rascal Session Belgian-style white ale. Very fancy.
You know, we're also coming off two historic events, two cultural milestones. The world changed this last week. And I'm dating this podcast, which Nat doesn't like me to do, but I also don't think, what's anyone going to do with this? They're going to timestamp it and get me my star chart? What are you worried about, huh? What are you worried about? They're going to find out if our podcast is a Libra rising? What's your problem?
They're going to find out how long we take to plan and execute things.
Oh.
But it's okay. It's okay.
That's fine. Anyway, two cultural moments. Nat, are you happy about the World Cup?
I had a great time. I mean, really, seriously speaking, the best World Cup final I've ever seen. I don't know if you watched it, Yen. I assume you did.
Actually, Nat, I did catch a little peek of it. If I'm not wrong, 3-3 is the highest a game can go in soccer. Is that correct?
It is not correct.
Anything past that, and they have to start taking players off the field?
And that is also incorrect.
Actually, I found the World Cup pretty fascinating. I don't know why people didn't tell me that the field shrinks after the 45-minute mark, and if you're outside of the line, you get electrocuted.
Yeah. FIFA World Cup Battle Royale, it was a new initiative this year.
It's just there's so many things about it that I wish people told me. And they can use their hands. I don't understand. This shit's crazy, dude.
I don't know what you're saying right now, but I just want to say, as a diehard lover of the great, beautiful game football, the World Cup was incredible. I won money.
You won money? Are we endorsing gambling on this podcast now?
Hey, it was a legal bet.
Goodness. So Nat had a cultural event. I think it's kind of, whatever. I also had a cultural event, and I think mine is more important because his cultural event, happens every 4 years. Mine, it's been 12 years since the last one. And ladies, gentlemen, I am talking about my return to the wonderful, the colorful, the vibrant, the luscious world of Pandora. This is now an Avatar podcast.
I've yet to see it. I'm planning to. Maybe next week. Would you recommend it, Yen? Would you recommend it?
I would 100% recommend it. I think it's pretty hard to have a bad time watching these kinds of movies. And it's also one of these things, and not to get real. Not to get real. Nat, may I get real?
You may. Please. We're drinking. I think we're allowed to get real.
And this is the only way men can be emotionally honest with each other is with alcohol.
Yeah, with alcohol.
And talking about football.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of Navi in there,
And I'm shirtless right now.
And he's shirtless. And I'm fully clothed. But my toes are out.
Nice.
To be real, we have been so dulled as a species, as an audience, by the absolute drudgery that is released by action producers and blockbusters that Avatar 2, if it came out in like 2008, it'd be like, oh, that was pretty good. Now it's like, it's like the second coming,
Did you watch it in 3D?
Nat, I watched it in 3D IMAX. I had the glasses on. I needed to pee. I ran out, sprinted to the toilet. Guy by the popcorn said, hey, no running. And I slowed down and he said, hey, I'm just kidding. You better sprint, buddy. And I ran for my life.
So you missed a part of it. Now you got to watch it again.
I missed a little bit. I mean, that's what James Cameron says. He said, this is a real thing. An interviewer asked him, what are people supposed to do when they need a pee during this 3-hour, 20-minute runtime? A literal runtime for me because I sprinted. And James Cameron said, well, that's fine. They can just see what they missed when they come watch it again.
Nice.
And that's the level of confidence I aspire to.
Are you going to watch it again?
I haven't decided yet. I probably. What am I supposed to do? Celebrate the holidays? No.
Let's talk about the format of this show, shall we? The format of this show closely follows the plot of Avatar: The Way of Water.
Okay, I'm back in, folks. I'm back in.
Which Yen will now explain how that is so. Because I've not seen it. So you have to do this part.
Okay, actually, no. We're more similar to the first Avatar, where Zoe Saldana's character, Neytiri, has to explain to the human-turned-Avatar-turned-Na'vi, Jake Sully, the wonders of the planet Pandora. In this scenario, I am Neytiri, and Nat is Jake Sully, soon to be Torok Makto.
He's just pulling this out of his brain.
No, this is all accurate. This is exactly it. This is exactly.
Are you reading the names? Or do you have it in your...
I know. Torok Makto.
You are insane.
I'm not insane. It's
You are
cool.
insane. How do you remember these names?
Dude, have you not noticed this? This entire podcast is predicated on me having a good memory. This entire thing works because I can remember what I read and watch.
But you know when you do your Yants, you prepare them, you write them down, you read them to a certain extent.
You don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know that.
Now they do.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
I'm complimenting you. I'm impressed by your ability to remember these fictional names from a fictional language in a fictional universe. So just take the compliment and carry on. Tell them about the format of this show.
Well, you tell them about it. You always tell them about it. Why are you making me talk about it?
So, how this show works is that Yen, who loves comics, he loves them so much, it's borderline creepy, talks to me, a person who really does not care about comics, about comics. And his agenda, his aim, his number one goal in life is to convince me to like comics. And so how he does this is he picks a comic every week, he prepares a little spiel, a little, what we like to call an unhinged Yant, tells me about what's so great about this comic, what to look out for, and then I go read it, come back, we talk about it, and then we see if he succeeded. We see if he converted a non-believer to a believer.
I love the choice of words you chose today. Non-believer and believer. Because today we're veering into... No, to describe it as religious would be very false. But today we're looking at one of my personal favorites. And I'm going to be honest, folks. Today's episode, maybe I'm priming this wrong, but I don't think Nat's going to like it. I'm just doing this one for me.
Wow, what a vote of confidence for me. Or is it for you?
I'm like George Clooney. I do Ocean's 13 so that I can do The Descendants. And that's a good old Clune reference for you Clune heads out there.
Not a Clune. Get it?
No. I don't get it. I actually don't get what you're doing.
I didn't understand that joke, so I said, oh, not a Clune. Not a Clune.
Nah, I don't like it. Nat, set me up.
Hey!
Thank you. It's time for the Yant, folks. Nat, what do you know about Hellboy?
Very, very, very little. I think I have a vague mental image of him. He has little stubby horns. Is this correct?
Man, no, you're wrong.
Oh, shit.
Well, he's got stubs, and they are kind of like horns, but actually they're not horns.
Okay, well, I think we're both seeing the same thing. So that's pretty much all I know about him. Yeah, I don't even know. Is he Marvel or DC or neither?
Wow, we're going straight into it, folks. He's actually neither.
Oh.
So I actually didn't know much about Hellboy growing up either. I loved the first movie.
Wait, you mean you came out of your mother and you didn't immediately know about Hellboy?
I didn't. I was not born and Mike Mignola was in the room and was like, hey man, check out this stuff. Check out this shit. That's not what Mike Mignola sounds like. I loved the first Hellboy movie. I did not see it in cinemas. But my friend had the DVD, and every time I went to his house, we would watch it over and over and over again. And I couldn't tell my mom about it because it had hell in the title.
How old were you?
I was, I want to say 10 or 11. Do you have something to say about that?
No, I was just trying to
set the stage.
Set the scene, form the image of 10-year-old Yen, which I have seen a picture of.
So what is Hellboy, Nat? You don't know. I don't know why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Long story short, it's about a demon boy who is summoned by the Nazis and their special scientists led by Rasputin.
Oh dear.
During World War II, and he ends up joining the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, BPRD for short, and helping them fight, find, solve supernatural cases with mysterious entities all over the globe. Hellboy was created by Mike Mignola, who also wrote and drew most of the character in its history. Mignola is a titan of the comic book industry, and we're going to talk about him later. But just in terms of what Hellboy exists as now, he's got several spin-off series, he's got a ton of short stories, a lot of different artists have collaborated on it, a lot of different writers have participated in the Hellboy universe, with specifically spin-off books for BPRD, Lobster Johnson, another character, all these other side characters that emerge from the Hellboy story. Let me give it to you in numbers, okay, Nat?
I love numbers.
13 Hellboy graphic novels, several spin-off titles. So I mentioned BPRD, Lobster Johnston. There's also Ape Sapien and Witchfinder. 3 anthologies of prose stories, several novels, 2 animated films, 2 live action films, and 1 more live action film that's kind of a reboot of the other 2.
That's a lot. That's a lot of content.
It's a lot of content, and it's all coming from just one guy. It's coming from Mike Mignola. I'm not saying he directed and he wrote all these things, but this universe comes entirely from him. And that kind of spinning out and granting the characters to others, it reminds me of H.P. Lovecraft and how he handled his mythology, where he had these, creatures he would make up, and then he would give them to other people to write about them. And he wouldn't ask them to pay him. He would actually teach them. They would talk to each other, and they would just produce works that existed within his world. And there's no coincidence that I'm making that connection, because Hellboy is inspired by many different types of stories, including Lovecraft, but also the old Pulp Fiction novels like Doc Savage, The Shadow, also inspired by the poetry of Edgar Allan Poe, a lot of folklore, and also the comic book artist Jack Kirby. And Hellboy wears all of those influences on its sleeves. Nat, today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to talk about Hellboy. I'm going to tell you what I think about him and what he meant to me. But also, Hellboy has been such a huge character. And there's a lot of great writing about him from artists who are going to explain it a lot better than I can. All the trades of Hellboy I've been rereading in preparation for this have these wonderful forewords that I'm going to read excerpts from later, and also some of Mike Mignola's own thoughts from interviews. So you're going to be hearing from a lot of people today, Nat, but it's all through my voice, so I apologize.
Yeah, that's not... I was excited. I thought you were going to make me watch some videos or something, but now you're just telling me you're going to read them to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess. Am I supposed to be excited? Scared?
I don't care. I told you, this one's for me. This one's for me.
I'm still here,
Let's
guys,
talk about...
but yeah, this one's for Yen.
Let's talk about Mike Mignola. He started inking comics in Marvel and DC in the 1980s. He does Batman, he does Marvel covers, and specifically, he draws this cover for a very famous issue of Batman. Little sidebar for you, Nat. This is an event called A Death in the Family, where the previous issue ends with the Joker threatening to kill a Robin.
Oh dear.
And at the end of the issue, readers are asked to call in and vote to decide if Robin dies in the next issue.
What?
It's a bizarre experiment. Has nothing to do with Hellboy. But I need you to know about it just so you get a better grasp of what democracy means. Because that's its potential.
What was the outcome?
Very disturbingly, people voted overwhelmingly to kill the child.
I guess dramatically it is interesting to see, what happens to Batman and how his reaction is, the implications on his psyche.
I guess. I think they just didn't like him. And Mike Mignola has talked about drawing that cover, and it's kind of funny that he drew it in a way where it could be interpreted either way because he didn't want to do the cover twice. It was like, oh yeah, he's wounded or he's dead.
Nice.
Smart and that's a big theme. It's kind of a funny thing, but it's also a big theme of Mignola and how he works. He really likes just doing things his way.
Like you.
I was trying to recall the lyrics and tune to Frank Sinatra's My Way, but I couldn't do it. My way. I do it my way. That's absolutely not it, folks.
That's what song is that?
That's a Maliente original.
Isn't it the something? I did it my way.
Oh, that's exactly it. So Mike Mignola, he's working at Marvel. And then something happens when he's working on this book, and the details are a little fuzzy, but he feels slighted by the publisher because they improperly communicate something with him. And it makes him really angry and has him questioning his place in the industry and whether he wants to be in the place where he's at, because he's fairly successful. But he's also subject to other people's whims. And so he's considering jumping ship, going to the other side, going to DC, spending more time there, because this is the 90s and it's New York and everybody knows everyone. And he's thinking, well, actually, I don't really care much about the characters at DC either. So maybe I should do something on my own. Maybe I should make something that excites me. And so throughout the 90s, while he's doing this work, Mignola's doing conventions and people are asking him to do drawings. And sometimes people are saying, hey, can you draw what you want to draw? Because they don't want to be the person who's like, oh, can you draw Batman for me again? Can you draw Wolverine for me again? And so he starts developing this sketch of this character, this demon guy with these little red horns, goggles, trench coat. And he's just developing this character at these conventions, not really thinking much of him. And then eventually he's looking at him. He's like, I think I'm going to name this character Hellboy. And he describes his story across a lot of interviews. And it's pretty hard to locate what was actually the genesis of the character and the design of the character, because all Mike Mignola says, and this is what he says: I distinctly remember looking at that drawing and it had that belt buckle kind of thing, and I wrote in it Hellboy. And I just started laughing. I thought that was the funniest, stupidest name. There's such a distinct memory of that moment. This is the man that made this character that ends up becoming this sort of mini empire. And so we get to 1994, and he's talking to Dark Horse, which is another publisher, which we haven't talked about much. And he makes the first Hellboy comic, Hellboy Seed of Destruction. So Dark Horse is not Marvel, not DC. And at the time, before Hellboy, is mainly known for making other licensed works like Alien comics or Predator comics, like existing characters. And so Hellboy is a new original. And so for Seed of Destruction, he works with John Byrne, who I've mentioned in a previous episode, a seasoned writer of Superman and many other great comics. And this is Mignola's first time writing. He's co-writing with John Byrne. And he's described John Byrne as the training wheels. And then Seed of Destruction ends, and John Byrne was like, well, okay, I'm running away, and I'm taking the training wheels, and you're going to need to do this by yourself now. And Mignola actually finds that he loves having the wheels taken off, because now he's making decisions for himself. That first story has Hellboy narrating because John Byrne wanted that, and Mignola realized he didn't like it, and it's gone from then on. That's part of the joy of Hellboy, is the singularity of how much it's owned by him. We talked a little bit about this with Saga, in the case of Brian K. Vaughan, but he's still working with Fiona Staples, and they're working with an editor and things like that. Mike Mignola, in this case, is really just telling stories he wants to tell, and nobody's telling him otherwise. He's beholden to no one.
I know this is very different, but I see similarities with what we were talking about last week about webtoons and how the owner has full control over that. It's almost as if Mike Mignola was... Well, he's still creating now, isn't he? But if he had conceptualized the story in this day and age, he might almost have made it a webtoon, maybe. Who would have known?
Yeah. And that's the thing to really note about the 90s, right? Is that webtoon as a platform doesn't exist. Distribution exists very differently. We talked about Brian Michael Bendis making zines in the 90s, crime zines. The distribution on that is very, very different from what Mike Mignola is doing at Dark Horse. His comics are going nationally. They're going into people's hands. And what's in there, it's just things that he cares about, the things he's most interested in, and specifically the things he really wants to draw. And what he wants to draw is monsters.
Nice.
Yes. He's got his own monsters. He's got Abe Sapien, who's a fish man.
Wait, what?
He's got... I said what I said.
Ape Sapien is a fish man?
Did you see The Shape of Water?
I've not seen Shape of Water, but I'm familiar with the fishiness of Shape of Water.
So Guillermo del Toro, who also made Shape of Water, also directed the first two Hellboys. And so there's a lot of connectivity between Abe Sapien and The Shape of Water.
Interesting.
So he's got Abe Sapien, he's got Hellboy, he's got Roger, the homunculi. But he's also adapting other people's monsters. So I talked about the mythology of H.P. Lovecraft, but there's also Frankenstein, there's the pulp magazines, there's cybernetic monkeys, there's floating heads, Nazis. There's also folklore. So he's pulling from Norse mythology. He's pulling from Southeast Asia, Ireland, Scotland, England, lots and lots of Eastern Europe. He's pulling from everywhere. And the thing that makes it so fantastic is that he's not beholden to any of it.
He's free.
He's free. So he's taking these sources and he's just like, So here's him describing it in his own words. But rather than do an adaptation, I'd just as soon do my own stuff and then steer back. And when they say, where'd you get that idea? You go, go read H.P. Lovecraft. There are times I've really wanted to adapt certain things, and certainly it's nice to be able to adapt somebody who's really a good writer, because then you've got all these words and you don't have to embarrass yourself writing your own words. But at this point, I've kind of got my hands full doing my own stuff. And the beauty of adapting the folk tales and fairy tale stuff that I'm using a lot in Hellboy is I've got traditional old stories that I can pick and choose elements of, but I can also play really fast and loose, which I just wouldn't be terribly comfortable with if I was adapting a piece of literature. He's pulling from these things that don't have an official author.
Right. They're in the public domain.
Essentially, they're in the public domain. There's an oral history of these characters, but there's no one person who can be like, oh no, this is it. This is it.
This is the canon.
Right? Yeah. One of those examples is like Baba Yaga, who's a Russian folktale about this witch who rides in this house that has chicken legs.
What?
And rides around, not on a broom, but she sits in a pestle and holds a mortar.
Is this something you know through Hellboy or something that you learned from your time in Russia?
Both, literally both. It was really like I was sitting in Moscow and I watched Hellboy and I found Hellboy in the library and I was like, hey, wait a minute, Baba Yaga.
Folks, for those of you that don't know, Yan spent a good portion of his life in Russia. A very interesting time that we do not have time to...
I really don't like how much of this episode's about my personal lore.
A very interesting chapter of his life that we don't have time to discuss on this podcast. But if you want to find out more, write an email to info@unlusproductions.com.
Absolutely.
And Yan
Oh
will
my
reply you personally with his entire biography.
Thank you, Nat. I can't believe we almost forgot to drop info@unlusproductions.com.
I'd never forget.
So Mike Mignola is just having fun drawing these things he wants to draw, and that fun is infectious. Hellboy is incredibly funny, but it's also a very joyful thing to look at. Even though there's so much shadow and darkness and horrifying creatures, there's this liveliness and a sense of fun, a sense of joy that comes from being inspired by all this other work. He's pulling from history and other writing, and I'm not going to bother trying to explain to you why he's so good at it, especially when he's pulling from like the pulp fiction stuff. I'm just going to let someone else do it. And that someone is a man we both fear, Alan Moore.
Oh, no.
Quote, Hellboy's least obvious accomplishment. Trick.
Wait.
Yeah.
Can you do your best Alan Moore voice, please?
I feel like if I do that, he's going to curse me. Like he's going to show up in my room. Okay, but I'll try. I'll do a little bit.
You don't have to do an Alan Moore voice. Just do a
Okay.
voice. Because I need to have a different audio experience.
Okay. Hellboy's least obvious accomplishment. The trick. The skill entailed in this delightful necromantic conjuring of things gone by is not, as might be thought, in crafting work as good as the work that inspired it. It really, but in the more demanding task of crafting work as good as everyone remembers the original as being. It's not enough to reproduce the past. Instead, we have to blend it artfully with how we see things now, and without visions for the future, if we are to mix a brew as rich, transporting, and bewitching as the potions we remember from the vanished years.
Incredible. I have chills.
Yeah, and what Alan Moore is saying so well, and I don't know why I'm bothering to rephrase it, but the idea is that Mike Mignola is not recreating the past. He's recreating our memories of the past. And that's why Hellboy feels so timeless. And that's talking about the pulp stuff. But folklore plays an equally massive part. And what makes it so exciting is that as a creator, Mike Mignola is always talking about how he's doing things. In the short stories collected throughout Hellboy's run in the trades, and there's a lot of different short stories because Mike Mignola, every time he sees a monster in his research or whatever, he's like, oh, Hellboy's gonna fight this. And at the start or end of every single one of those short stories, there's a little note from Mike Mignola saying, oh yeah, I pulled this from here. I like this. I didn't like this. I actually lost the notes for this ending, so I had to make up something completely different.
Oh, so he includes all these thoughts and explanations in the comics themselves.
Within the collected trades.
I see. That's super cool.
And so I added this bit of folklore because I like drawing that, and just makes you feel really connected to the story and the creation of it because you're seeing this guy having fun.
So you almost get like a writer's commentary as you read.
Yes.
Is that common in the comic book world?
No, it's pretty rare. And it's pretty rare that it's so embedded into the main way people engage with Hellboy now, which is through trades.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't, the main Hellboy line hasn't been publishing monthly for very long. Mike Mignola is doing it all himself, so there were always long breaks between it. So primarily it's read through trades, and you're reading it through this lens of, oh, this guy's making it. And for the visuals, I'm not going to bother explaining it to you because you're going to see it yourself. But there's also two people who explain it a lot better than me. The first being Guillermo del Toro, the director and writer of the first two Hellboy movies, as well as The Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, Pan's Labyrinth, the list goes on and on and on. And here's what he said.
Voice, please.
Oh, okay. Oh man. Give me a prompt. Give me a little taste of a voice you want from me.
Okay, I want a sleepy dwarf.
I humbly confess that many a time I have aspired to imitate Mignola's mysterious style in the design of my films, especially the cold velvet backdrop of darkness from which his characters emerge. Alas, his hyper-expressionistic lighting is, I found out, almost impossible to reproduce in a 3D world. And then there are the moments of quiet, almost elegant horror juxtaposed with a kinetic energy only hinted at by the best of Kirby. And then above all,
The best of Kirby.
an irritating simplicity.
Are you really going to interrupt me mid-quote?
Sorry.
You little face.
But did you
You
see
little bag?
the best of Kirby? Like the Smash character?
Were you not listening? I've already mentioned Jack Kirby earlier in this Yant, okay? So shut your mouth and listen.
I can't remember so many names.
Too many names.
I'm not like you, Yen. I'm not like you.
Turok Makdo.
Another person we've got is Walt Simonson, the writer and artist. Huge influence on the comic book industry. Reshaped the character of Thor. And here's his quote. Give me what voice do you want?
Oh. Well, since you mentioned Thor, give me your best Chris Hemsworth.
I got. What does he sound like?
Well, but not the Australian Chris Hemsworth. Like Chris Hemsworth's Thor, you know?
I think it's just gonna sound like the sleepy dwarf.
No, but Thor has like a presence to him, as a commanding aura.
Okay.
He's the god of thunder.
Mike's storytelling is interestingly conservative with its rectilinear layouts and measured pacing. No mad bleeds, inset panels, or radical page layouts here, but the visual sense of order belies the underlying sense of chaos. His transitions from the mundane to the supernatural, as in Dr. Cobb's experiment, almost hallucinogenic in their simplicity. The known falls away from us as we cross a panel border and we find ourselves captured by the nightmare. With his use of the occasional small panels presented as panes of atmospheric patterns scattered throughout his stories, Mignola evokes a sense of almost religious iconography, traces of that hidden world in which meaning is too powerful or overwhelming to be completely understood.
Well done, Yen.
The voice really dropped off in the middle of that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing there. I feel like I
okay.
should have done like a 1920s radio broadcast at some point because all of those were just weirdly British. I didn't like that.
I got a blend of like Thor and Barack Obama.
Oh man, what's the Barack Obama phrase?
Let's be clear. I'm going to be perfectly clear.
That's the worst. Cut that. That can't make it. Nat, this is the first action-centric comic book we've read. Because I've been scared of giving you those. Because I'm not sure if you're going to follow it. Because you're not as into action as I am. But Hellboy is a great place to start because there is a clear kinetic energy to these pages, as has already been pointed out. There's a clarity to the action, the moment between panels, the fights, the punches, also the falling. Hellboy is constantly falling. Like, that is a thing that happens in almost every single Hellboy issue, is he's standing on a floor and it caves in. And every single time I'm turning that page and I am hooting and I'm hollering and I am cheering because it's just these beautiful images of Hellboy with his tail, his giant right hand, his trench coat, the little stubs on his forehead, falling into these deep pits of shadow, being clutched by a gorilla, a snake lady, a vampire, a werewolf. Whatever you can name, Hellboy has fallen down with.
What about COVID?
Cut that. That's not making it. And that's part of the reason I love Hellboy, because as a kid, it was pure excitement, and I didn't know any of the things that Mignola was referencing. I was just reading it purely as a comic book, as a story in itself, and I was gripped by the shadows, the darkness of these characters, the darkness of the appearances, the liveliness of the storytelling, and the humor, and of course, these great monsters. These was my first encounters with things of a Lovecraftian nature. This was Hellboy. And now the joy of it, as someone looking at it, as someone who wants to make comics and write stories, is just seeing the openness with which Mignola approaches that and being so brazen about what he's writing. So you're going to be reading 3 comics. The first is The Corpse, the second is Pancakes, and the third is Box Full of Evil. The Corpse is one of those Hellboy short stories that I love, and it's considered by many to be Mignola's best work because of the frenetic energy at which it moves from page to page, where basically he was trying to experiment and see how much he could make happen within 2 pages. So that whole book is basically split into 2-page blocks. It's not a 2-page comic.
Oh, yeah.
But Pancakes is.
What?
Pancakes is a 2-page Hellboy story, and it's one of the most iconic ones, and it's really, I find it hilarious.
This guy really just does what he wants, huh?
Because Dark Horse will be like, oh, we've got 2 pages in the back of this magazine that we want to fill, and he'll be like, okay.
Nice.
And the last one is Box Full of Evil, which is longer, and it's also part of the bigger Hellboy story, but I don't think you're going to need that context. It should be fine. And it's even though it's part of that larger, grander story that Mignola is telling with Hellboy, there's also the same sense of raucous humor. I want you to read it, and there's a panel in it, and there's a lot of great things in A Box Full of Evil, but there's one panel you're gonna look at. There's one like row of panels you're gonna look at it, and you'll be like, I know why Yant chose this. And that's the joy of Hellboy for me. It's the action, it's the comedy, it's the mythology, it's chain-smoking cigars in a trench coat. It's one hell of a time. Thank you.
I must say, you know, I don't care much for you as a person or your happiness, but seeing you so excited about this episode, like I've not seen you brimming with so much joy since...
Are you kidding me?
You are so excited about this. It's sort of rubbing off on me. So I'm ready. I'm ready to dive into this and read it.
Okay, so Nat is going to be reading The Corpse, Pancakes, and Box Full of Evil. And if you want to follow along and you want to try and find them, you can find them in the Hellboy trade, The Chained Coffin, and others. That's where The Corpse is. And you can find Pancakes and Box Full of Evil in The Right Hand of Doom. And so we're going to acknowledge up front that Nat is going to be reading these online because it's really hard to find physical trades of Hellboy. I've read Hellboy several times, and each time it's been from a different public library. And every time, those are like after waiting on a wait list forever and reading them totally out of sequence. So today, Nat's going to be, for convenience's sake, he's going to be reading them online. Yeah, and so we hope you can read it too. At the very least, Pancakes is widely available because it's only 2 pages. So if you search Hellboy Pancakes on Google, you can find it. The others will be a little harder to track down unless you can get to those trades.
Okay, let's dive right into them. Here we go. The Corpse. Up the airy mountain, down the rushing glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. Nice. Ireland, 1959. What have you done with my baby? Hey, here's our man Hellboy. Let me see what I can do. That's his voice. I've got something for you. What do babies like? Oh, I'm scared. Babies like iron? Oh dear, it's a demon baby. Oh my gosh. You threw him into the fire? I promise to get your daughter back. Be patient, they won't harm her. This is an old game and I've got to play it their way. Interesting. Boy, it's gold down there. Gold. Whoa, I'm gonna smack you. This dialogue is great. Oh, something's hitting him. It's an invisible force. Oh my goodness. It's a giant warthog. Yeah-ha-ha! Where's your iron now, Hellboy? Onk, onk, onk. Oh, this is great. Oh, nice. He punched him. And the pig runs away. Tap, tap, tap. Just tapping a baby's head with a horseshoe. Love it. You're okay. Oh, the end. Great, great story. Pancakes. 1947 in an Air Force base somewhere in New Mexico. Hellboy. Oh my gosh. It's small Hellboy. So cute. Hellboy. Breakfast. Age 2. I want hot noodles. Wow. Very, very articulate for a 2-year-old. You can't have noodles for breakfast. I disagree. Asian culture disagrees. But sure. We're gonna have pancakes. What? Pancakes? I don't like pancakes. Me neither, my dude. One bite. Open. Ah. USA fork. Love it. Hey. I love it. What? Meanwhile, in Pandemonium, capital city of hell. He has eaten the pancake. He will never come back to us. Now. Oh no. He has eaten the pancake. Truly, this is our blackest hour. Love it. Okay, what's next? Box full of evil. A man walked into the room, a complete stranger. Short with a round head and a ridiculous sort of mustache. I was frozen in place until 11:30 this morning. Oh dear, everyone was paralyzed. He put the devil in a box. It's a devil in a box. And locked it and put holy seals upon it and hid it. And now here is that box. Oh my goodness. They belong to Satan. I'm sure he will take good care of you. I highly doubt so, my guy. Come forth in a shape that is not too horrible, please. That's your request. Oh, Satan's a fly. He went in the mouth. And then, you're a monkey. Oh! And you, lizard or pig, I am protected against the likes of you. His name, what's his secret name? Ualak? A minor demon of hell. Oh, so it's not the devil. The great beast harbinger of apocalypse. Can you bring him here? He is here already. Wait, Hellboy? No, that can't be. It's all fully quiet. Let's check upstairs. The monkey's got a gun! Blam blam! Oh dear. Blam. Abe, he shot Abe. You lousy son of a... Oh, it is him. Hellboy is the harbinger of apocalypse. What? I curse thee and bind thee in chains. Oh, Hellboy's horns grew out. And he has a crown? A crown of the apocalypse? It will be my pleasure to beat him to death. No! What? It's not his name? It's not my name, it's yours. How about that? Oh my goodness. Boom. Boom. Bang. He's turning into a lizard. What? Hey, he's falling. I found the panel that he's falling in. He's falling into the moat. Spoosh. I am back.
Welcome back, Nat.
I am back from reading Hellboy. Yen, I gotta say something.
What?
You know, you said this episode was for you, for your enjoyment, for your pleasure.
Oh boy, Nat, are you about to make me the happiest man in the world?
Unfortunately, I am. That was so fun.
Oh!
Why would you think I wouldn't enjoy action?
That's crazy.
It's
I don't
such
know, actually.
It was such an easy read, a light read, yet the story and the plot. I mean, we'll get into it, but
Oh my god. I'm gobsmacked. Genuinely, I'm gobsmacked.
I'm actually curious to know why you think I wouldn't like action. Because to me, action, it's not as heavy and intellectual, as like Neil Gaiman's prose, for example. It's boom, bang, whack, clang, pow, pow, and like...
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I feel is more accessible for the non-comic reader. Would you not agree?
Well, I don't know. I see what you're saying, but I think part of my concern with it also is this is what some people expect comics to be. And they're like, oh, it's just punching and thrashing and kicking and things like that. It's just the pows and the booms. And so it's sometimes perceived as infantile. And that's part of the reason why we haven't looked at action comics, because I couldn't think of one that I would surefire be like, oh no, this one's really good. That's why we haven't looked at a lot of superhero stuff, because the superhero stuff is like a lot of action, and some of that action is really good, but some of it's also like, sometimes that's what people expect, and they're like, oh, it's just Superman punching people, who cares, right? Whereas in Hellboy, there's actually like a level of choreography to it.
Right. No, I get what you're saying, and now that you said it, and I guess, again, this is another compliment to you.
All right,
and the way you've structured this season.
Let's go.
Oh, well, I guess to you and our producer, Roshan, because...
No, forget about him. It's all about me.
Because I think if I had read this much earlier on in my journey, maybe I would have had some of those thoughts, right? That it's simplistic and it's another one of those bang, bang, pow, punch, punch, But having read Sandman, having read Watchmen, having read Saga, with all that context behind me, suddenly this is like almost a breath of fresh air.
And I do think the understated thing we're mentioning here is that you're approaching it generously.
Right. I am,
right?
Yeah.
If we came in earlier and you were like not really convinced by comic books as the medium, you'd be reading this and you'd be like, well, I guess so. I guess this is, right? But now you're looking at it and you're like, and you're able to, and I'm speaking for you, so you don't need to talk for the rest of the podcast. I'll just keep speaking for you.
Okay, but do the voices, okay?
So actually, that's what you sound like to me.
Wow.
No, but like you're looking at the panels, you're like, oh, actually, if I think of this as like a calculated decision, right? If I think of this as a deliberate choice and not something that's just like, scroll by, let's just whiz by this, let's move on.
Yeah.
Then you're able to be like, oh, wow, some of this shit's cool.
I mean, I think the alcohol helps for sure. And the fact that you, and the fact that you primed me that this is going to be a fun read. I think I heard the word kinetic a lot in like the quotes that you read. Yeah. So I think you primed me to sort of just go in with an expectation of this is going to be a fun ride. And I think through that lens, all the action and all the comedic quips and the transitions and all those things all came together to be this very, very easy light but also interesting journey.
What sequence do you want to talk about these in?
Let's go in the sequence that I read them. So we can start
we're
with the
gonna
corpse.
with the corpse. And so for listeners who didn't get a chance to read the corpse is basically a smorgasbord of folklore from Ireland, where almost every 2 pages, Hellboy encounters a new type of myth while he is trying to track down this baby that is being kidnapped by a fairy.
Oh, are they fairies?
I don't think they ever actually say it, but they are fairies.
Interesting.
They're part of Hellboy's larger mythology in his journey. They come up in a box full of evil, and we'll talk about them again later.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, you didn't know they're fairies, but also did you know any of the other myths? No, right?
No, I was clueless, as usual.
Yeah. The fairies give Hellboy this very specific request, which is he is to bury this talking corpse before the sun rises, or else they'll keep the baby.
Mm.
And it's a really odd task, and it's surprisingly difficult, it turns out, to bury a corpse.
Yeah, especially one that talks and has demands.
And it's so whiny about losing an arm.
And then wants the gold. It's like, and Hellboy is like, for what? What do you want with the gold? I just love that Hellboy articulates the reader's thoughts. Like when the corpse says that they want the gold, like the reader immediately thinks, for what? And then Hellboy says the exact same thing. Which leads me to something that I found really interesting. And probably this is like going to be a really duh thing for anyone who has ever consumed any Hellboy content and is familiar with the character. But obviously, as I said, I know nothing about this character other than his 2 stumps. So in this issue, and actually it was an accumulation of the 3 issues, it was really interesting for me to get to know this character because it wasn't what I expected.
Oh, yes.
Right? Because you think Hellboy, you think this huge red guy from hell, and you think about vengeance and evil, but then he's like this, he's basically a dude lah. He's just this guy trying to help people out, and even his language is so colloquial. I think there were moments where he said, geez, and then there's another one where he said, you, something dumbass.
Yeah.
He's
yeah.
basically like an American, right? Like he's an American dude. And obviously this is explored in Pancakes, how he's taken out from hell, and we'll talk about that later. And also further on in A Box Full of Evil, where he denounces that part of his identity, right?
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting journey for me, starting with the corpse, just encountering this character who just was not what I expected at all.
Yeah, and I think that was something I wanted to conceal in my Yant and not let you know. So I wanted you to discover it for yourself. Because, when we're talking about mythology and all those things, you kind of come into this and you expect, be like, from what upon yonder sky break?
I mean, and the demons do talk like that.
Yeah, right? And then Hellboy is just this, he's an average Joe. I mean, Mike Mignola has described him as blue collar.
Right. No, yeah, definitely.
Right. He's raised on an army base. He's basically a military brat. Like, he's not inheriting the attitude of hell or any demon's perspective. He took on the personalities of the people who raised him, and they were just totally normal dudes. And so I'm going to get you a quote again from Mignola about the character of Hellboy. Quote, "My Hellboy is modeled on my father in some ways. A guy who's been in the Korean War, and he's traveled, and he's done a lot of stuff, and he's kind of got a been there, done that attitude."
Yeah, I definitely get that.
And that's what makes this character so fun, right? Because he's just like, he's seeing this giant boar and he's just like, okay, whatever. Because that's one part of this, is that while trying to cross a bridge, the bridge explodes and a giant boar bursts over the bridge and Hellboy has to fight him. And Hellboy's response is like, this guy, come on.
Yeah. He's so likable.
He's so likable. And he sits in such, I mean, we can talk about visual contrast, but there's also tonal contrast, right? When all these, like you said, all these other characters are speaking in sort of like verse / this very like poetic, like almost epic poetry.
And all these like Latin-esque names.
Yeah. And Hellboy's just not playing the game, right?
His name is just Hellboy.
Yeah. He's just
like
Hellboy.
The contrast between Hellboy and what is his real name, which is revealed in A Box Full of Evil, that's a huge contrast right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the corpse. I was reading it with you again. It just moves so fast.
I don't know why, but one of my favorite bits is Hellboy and the corpse just going to these different churches, and then all the skeletons that look so like intimidating, and they're all just like, no room, no room, no room.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
And there's not even like a fight over it. Like, Hellboy doesn't fight any of the people who say no room. He's like, okay, okay, I get it. I'm out. I'm gone. Okay, shut up.
I gotta make this reference. That whole section, as we approach Christmas, Mary and Joseph also encountered The issue of no room.
And so let's discuss.
And
let's,
thus
no, let's break
Jesus
this
was
down.
born in a
Let's
manger.
break this down. So in this situation, is the corpse or Hellboy the Virgin Mary? I just want to get that clear.
No. The analogy ends there. It doesn't extend past no room. I just wanted to bring that up in the spirit of Christmas. That's all I'm saying. No, but I love that. I think there's one in particular, I think it's the second one where like the skeleton's on fire.
Yeah.
The second place they tried.
Yeah.
What's the name of it? No, this is a Carrick Father Vicarus. Right?
Yeah.
And then like the skeletons are on fire and then there's like 5 of them in one panel. And then they just go, no room. So good.
This is what I was saying, that like the humor of Hellboy, there's a humor in the character, and Mike Mignola has a sense of humor with it too. Like the scenarios he puts Hellboy in.
Speaking of which, like another scenario, the scenario right after that,
Yeah.
you know, the one of like the gold and this thump. I mean, is that something that is recalling something from another issue, or like it's a recurring thing or a situation, or
So
because it just felt really random.
So what Nat is describing is that Hellboy and the cops are wandering through,
Right,
they're
yeah.
leaving the cemetery, and they see this giant rock floating just a few inches above the ground, and it's just hitting the ground. It's going thump, thump, thump.
And then they realize that there's gold where the rock is thumping, and then they have that conversation about the cop saying, I want the gold. And then he's like, what the hell do you want the gold for? You're dead. It was really funny,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious if that has any sort of connections to anything else in the universe.
Absolutely not.
Wow.
It is,
So it really just is
totally
random.
a thing into itself. That moment when Hellboy keeps clashing into the force field.
Yeah.
This is a great page. I love this page. He sees this little cavern, and Hellboy tries to hop over a stone fence, and then the whole panel goes white, and he's smacked by something we can't see. Then it goes back to the normal dark colors, and then he tries again, and the last panel again is this high contrast black and white. And then we see the cave, and then the cave is empty, and then the next thing we see is just a whistling coming out of the cave.
Well, we don't know it's a whistle. It
Sure.
could be
It could be singing, it could be, it's just,
Yeah.
we just know it's a note. All we get is, give me the notation. Give me what type of note is this? A quarter?
This is a
quaver.
quaver. A quaver.
And that is also not part of anything else.
Yeah.
That is just Mike Mignola reading something in an encyclopedia or hearing about something and being like, you know what would be fun if Hellboy had to deal with this.
Oh, so this is lore.
This is mythology. It's folklore.
You mean this thing about a cavern with music coming out and a force field around it is a reference to something?
It's a reference to an existing story of mythology or whatever.
Oh.
It's the same thing with the rock thumping.
Right.
So this is what I'm saying about Mignola playing fast and loose. He's not even going to explain it. He's not even going to give us a word to Google to figure it out.
Right. Speaking of which, on page 300 of this thing that we're reading.
We're looking at the complete short stories, volume 1, Hellboy. Yeah.
Right.
Page 300.
Yeah, this massive panel of this pig. I mean, you had primed me for the
Yes.
monsters.
Yeah.
And I know you love your monsters. I think we've talked
I
about
love
this
my
before.
monsters.
Yan loves King Kong. Yan loves Godzilla. He loves them equally. He doesn't want to pick one over the other.
They're my kids. They're my children.
And so, you had primed me for the monsters, but when this big boy showed up, I was like, oh yeah,
Yes.
that's good. That's a good monster. Like he has like what, tree trunks? No, those are not tree trunks. Those are just his arms. But they look like tree trunks.
They're huge.
They're massive.
And then in that page, she eats the little gremlin.
I didn't even notice that.
It's like a blink and you miss it. He just kind of grabs him and he eats him. And that's it.
Oh, yeah. Damn. Another thing I really enjoyed, I love the sounds the monsters make.
Oh, yes.
It's not just the choice of words, it's the font, the size of the words.
Yeah.
Onk.
Yep.
It's so much fun. Like you can't help to say it. I mean, I know I say it out loud for the sake of this podcast, but I have a feeling if I was reading it on my
Yeah.
own, I'd still say it
Yeah.
out loud because it's funny.
Nat, can you go to 303 when after Hellboy has punched the guy with the talisman and it shrinks? Do you see the new sound effect it makes now that it's small?
Ook, ook, ook.
So it's funny, like
Okay, to clarify, when he's big, he goes, what was it? U-R-K, Urk?
U-R-N-K.
Urk. And then when he's small, he loses the R and the N, and then he just goes UK.
Ook, ook, ook.
Ook, ook.
He could be actually saying UK. He could be
He could be Brexit.
UK.
He's pro-Brexit.
One more thing I want to talk about within the cops before we move along, but we
Yep.
can still talk about it more, is 304 when he jumps in the water.
Yes, to get the arm
Just
back.
look at the visuals of that. Oh my goodness.
But also, this was a really interesting character moment for me as well. Because it's like the corpse wants his arm. I don't know to what extent the deal with the fairies was dependent on the corpse being fully intact.
Right.
But the corpse is like saying, oh, I need my arm. And then Hellboy says exactly what the reader is thinking, which is, do you really need your arm? I mean, you're dead and we gotta go. But then he obliges. He goes back in. He gets the arm. And to me, that was a huge character moment for me to understand the character, because I was like, wow, he totally didn't have to do that. Or at least I didn't think he had to. But he did it anyway. And that it revealed a kindness. It revealed a sort of generosity of his spirit that, again, went against everything I thought about what this character would be.
Again, Hellboy, he's just a guy. He's just a good guy.
But he's a good guy. He's not just a guy. He's a good guy. Yeah.
You're right. So going back to the visuals of this panel.
Yes.
So this is something that you're not going to get because you don't know this about comics. But, I was talking about Jack Kirby earlier. And one of the famous things from Jack Kirby is the Kirby crackle, which was this way that Jack Kirby would depict energy and power waves and, all these crazy like energy beams and lasers. And Mignola is using that to show Hellboy diving. It's those little circles in the middle of that panel.
Yeah, very
cool.
cool.
See that?
Very cool, yeah.
And it just creates this dynamism, right? It feels like everything's moving, everything's living.
Yeah. No, the art, I think there'll be more to talk about it in A Box Full of Evil, but the art is really something else.
Let's go to
Pancakes.
the one I knew you were going to love. This one, I knew it. This one, I was like, if he hates it.
Who could not love this?
Pancakes is an extremely short story, 2 pages, in which we meet young Hellboy, 1947, 2 years after the war. He's hanging around in his base in New Mexico, and the general tells him, you're going to eat pancakes. That's page 1. And page 2, he eats a pancake, and the rest of the page is hell losing their minds because the beast of destruction is never going to come back to them because he likes pancakes. It's just hilarious. I love this. I love Pancakes. This is such a good story.
I want to talk about how 2-year-old Hellboy looks. It is insane.
Accelerated growth, man. He's a demon.
He has a beard.
He doesn't have a beard.
He has little tufts of hair.
Yeah, he's got really long sideburns.
Oh, he looks horrible, but strangely endearing.
It's easy to miss this, but do you see that panel where Hellboy's like refusing the pancakes? It's really funny because he's got this little normal hand and he's got his giant hand, which is called the right hand of doom, and both of them are like, no, both hands are like kind of like
and then he says,
get that away from me.
I don't like pancakes.
Right? He says pancakes. He doesn't even say pancakes. He's so cute. I love little Hellboy. I was actually toying between, I really wanted you to read Little Hellboy, and so I was toying between this one and a different story called The Night Circus, which I also recommend to anyone who likes Hellboy, but would also like to see more of him young and what he was like as a kid.
It's giving young Sheldon vibes.
Do you want to peek behind the curtain? Do you want to know the whole reason why Mike Mignola made Pancakes?
Sure.
Okay, so this is a long quote, so bear with me.
Okay.
Quote, boy, I wish there was a big story for that. That story came entirely from trying to get my daughter to eat pancakes.
I love it.
All she wanted to eat was hot noodles. That story was entirely inspired by that wild rigidity, this physical almost paralysis if you put unfamiliar food in front of her. I just thought that was funny. So when they asked me to do a story with Hellboy as a little kid, I was just being a smartass. What I should have said, what I meant to say, was that I didn't want to do it. What I said sarcastically was, I'll do a 2-page story where he eats pancakes. Unfortunately, the editor said, that's great, do that. So I stuck with, oh shit, what do I do? Well, I knew what the first page would be. This is when it's really, I love this bit. I knew what the first page would be. It was a 1-page story, but I didn't have a second page. I just thought it would be funny if we cut to hell because I had nothing left to do.
Oh, I love this guy.
I'd already done the gag with the pancakes where he becomes this paralyzed thing. Where does that gag go? So yeah, cut to hell and everybody's freaking out about it. There was no thought that went into it at all. It was something I didn't particularly want to do. I had a good time doing it, but I didn't give it any thought and certainly never thought people would be talking about it so many years later. I never thought it would even show up in any Hellboy collections. I just thought it'd be one of those weird things you do and then you forget they even happened. Oh well.
Love it. I love how candid he is. And like that candid, I don't really care, this is just for fun energy, totally feeds into, maybe there's confirmation bias, I don't know, but I feel it totally feeds into the story and just the characters and everything, the writing, the art.
Yeah.
You feel that sort of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sense of this is a man who's unrestricted by anyone.
He's not beholden to any sort of larger universe or logic or canon.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, he writes what he wants.
Well, he's beholden to his own canon. And
Right,
that's a really
right.
funny thing because I was listening to this interview with him and he was complaining about calling it the right hand of doom in an earlier comic. Because he was like, well, now I gotta figure out what that is. He cracks me up, dude. He's so funny. And what I want to point out that I find really funny about this explanation for why he made Pancakes is, do you remember when we were reading Watchmen and I told you about how Alan Moore realized the main plot was 6 issues?
Uh-huh.
And so he added every second issue as an origin story?
Yeah.
This is a very similar situation where someone was contracted to do something, realized they had half the content they needed, and then ended up making the thing that becomes the icon.
Right, right.
Just a page of him eating the pancakes is pretty funny. But the cut to hell is hilarious.
And the fact that the hey, I love it moment is on that second page, right? And it is in that top left-hand corner, and then the rest of the page is hell, and then in the bottom right is back to the fork. It's just this beautiful comedic transition after all the chaos in hell, and then just ending with that solitary fork on the plate, the end, with an empty plate.
Empty plate, because he's finished it. He's swallowed it all. And I want to just point out a visual thing before we move on. The fire behind Astaroth, Grand Duke of the Infernal Regions.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Do you see those little circles again?
I see it again.
There it is. That's Mignola's version of the Kirby Crackle, but this time it's not water, it's fire.
Nice.
And it works just as well. It's just as dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we dig into the meatiest one of the bunch?
Let us.
The longest story of the ones I made you read. Box Full of Evil.
This one felt the most consequential, right? Because it goes into Hellboy's past. He really reaches a point where he's beaten and he almost dies. And so it felt the heaviest.
Yeah. And I really wanted to get you exposed to this one because this is by and large what most Hellboy stories feel like within the main line.
Right.
Of him solving a case, and then it turns out it's got larger implications, bigger connections to who he is, his origin, the destiny he's trying to escape. And still, always this sense of fun.
Yeah, I mean, there are pages upon pages of action sequences in this issue where I don't think there's any dialogue. It's really just wham, pow,
Yeah.
clang, and I love it. Like, at risk of coming across like a non-intellectual, because I am, in reality, a very intellectual person.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Okay.
But just coming off something like Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which was so prosaic, and so literary in its exposition. Yeah. But then coming to something like this that was so like just wham, bam, this felt much more enjoyable to me. Or rather, it didn't feel like such a taxing read.
And it's funny because they're both kind of coming from similar places, right? Because Neil Gaiman is also making a mythology. It's just his approach is very different.
Yeah.
And he's also incorporating stuff from a lot of different stories, but his references are like Shakespeare and really engaging with the literary qualities of that. And Mike Mignola's like, I want to see a monkey. I want to see a monkey with a gun. And frankly, so do I. I want to see a monkey with a gun.
That's a great panel. Another one that, this one is not so much about a monkey with a gun as it is. But page 55, it's such a simple, it looks like something out of Tintin to me. So the top left panel, you see the hands of Hellboy, specifically the right hand of Doom, reaching to grab the fly, which is the demon. And it's like bzzz. Next panel, he grabs it. Third panel is, what's that bald dude's name? Bromwood. You see him gasp. You see him stumble through the corridor. And then the last panel, which is just this big panel, is Hellboy falling. Just as Yant said he would be doing. He is falling into a moat. And he's saying, ha!
I love Hellboy.
Like, doesn't this page look like something out of Tintin? I don't know if that's an accurate description for me, but it's just like, it's almost a childlike simplicity to this sort of very physical storytelling.
There's a childlike clarity to it. But what I want to point out to you that you're missing right now is it's a very physical, very direct form of storytelling. But also what Mignola does a lot is montage. Right? So actually Bromwood is not seeing this happen. Bromwood is currently locked behind the wall and is being transformed into a lizard. And the next panel is Abe Sapien stumbling away, also far from the action.
Oh, sorry. It was Abe Sapien stumbling away. Sorry, my bad.
Right? And so we're getting a collection of what's going on in this castle. And it's being framed through Hellboy chasing the fly, but we're getting these scattered moments all around. And you go through the comic through Box Full of Evil, you'll see a lot of moments where things just kind of pop out and they pop back in. It's the same thing we're talking about with Pancakes, where we cut to hell and then we cut back to the empty fork.
Yeah.
that whole fight between, Hellboy and the demon.
Mhm.
It's just great because there's this huge like wave of fire behind them that's changing its angles. The sword itself is aflame. We've got the Kirby crackle everywhere in these pages.
Yeah.
And I think something, this is one of the largest themes of Hellboy is that he's this average Joe who kind of wants to live a normal life as he can have, but he keeps being told he has this great destiny.
Yeah.
And this actually is kind of a pivotal moment within his story, in my opinion, where he rejects the name Anung Unrama, which is the name that he technically was born with. And that's that moment where he says, that's not my name, because his name to him is Hellboy. He's reclaiming his destiny.
And there's a moment where he's like, I think on page 53, where the demon says, you have almost become human. And Hellboy says, well, that makes me a lot better than you.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very definitive statement on where he is as a character.
And let's just talk about how freaking badass it is on that page.
That he rips off his own horns.
His horns. He takes off his horns to stab the demon. Oh.
It's pretty
Mike
good.
Mignola, let's go.
I mean, I sort of understood the horns in the sense that obviously, like, when his name is called, he's taken back to the realm of the demons or whatever, that his horns go back. But can you explain a little bit more about the significance of the horns? And
so the horns have only grown in times when he is being activated kind of against his will. And before this, he has visions of himself, of the right hand of doom, bringing about the apocalypse. And in all those visions, he's got the fully grown horns.
Right.
As opposed to the stubs that he usually has.
Okay.
So it's like a physical manifestation of his destiny.
That's some powerful stuff.
Let's go to 58.
Okay.
This page is insane.
Yeah.
Oh my
I actually
God.
thought this was the one. Like, I mean, obviously the listener is going to hear an edited version of my reading experience, but if you heard it in real time, you would have just heard me pause here for a good 30 seconds, just looking at this. Let us describe this, Yen. I mean,
I don't even know where to begin, Nat. I do not know where to begin.
let's do it like an improv game. We do alternating words.
Okay.
Okay, you start.
Kirby.
Crackle.
Purple.
Smoke.
Tentacle.
Combined.
With.
Python.
On.
Wait, what?
Oh no, I chose a bad one.
Yeah, what are you saying? Tentacle combined with Python.
Okay. We've got a major demon now who's captured the minor demon. And he's standing like a normal-sized man when Hellboy first meets him. And then in this panel, he reveals kind of his true form before he descends back into hell.
It's insane.
And it's just bonkers. He's riding this giant tentacle.
I thought he's riding
He's
a giant
holding-
seahorse, dude.
Oh, you're right, actually. Yeah. He's riding a giant seahorse with these kind of bat-like wings, and he's holding this huge snake, and Hellboy's in the foreground, and he looks tiny compared to this guy. And the thing that's really hard for us to describe over audio is the vibrancy of the color of this page.
Yeah, the purple hues are incredible.
The number of purples that Mignola manages to get to. Well, I don't think this is actually Mignola. This is, I believe, to be Dave Stewart, who is the colorist on Box Full of Evil.
Mhm.
Of course, in collaboration with Mignola, but it's just an incredible page and it's one of the last pages of this story. And we're just closing on this huge banger and this sense that, oh, there's so much worse out there for Hellboy.
Yeah.
There's so much, and this is what Walt Simonson was talking about, is that part of the draw of Hellboy is that there's always something, you're reading it and you're like, oh, I always feel like I don't know everything. I don't know everything, and that's fine. Actually, that's making it mysterious, and that's making it darker, and that's pulling me in even more.
But part of the appeal also is, going back to the been there, done that energy of Hellboy.
Yeah.
Because he's unfazed. Like, even in this panel,
Yes.
with this giant
Yes.
thing looming over him, he's standing there, his shoulders are relaxed. We just see the back of him. He's tiny, he's completely dwarfed by this demon, but he's just standing there and he's like, because the guy says, call me, and he says, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Right? And so in juxtaposition with this bigger, wider, badder universe that we have just caught a glimpse of is Hellboy as this unfazed protagonist who's like, whatever, bring it on, right? And that's exciting.
Yeah, dude, I love Hellboy. I can't say it enough. I was just supposed to reread a little bit of him to pick what we would read for this episode. And I just ended up going through like almost the entire bibliography because I just love the character so much. And there's so much fun in those pages.
I just wanted to say, I know you gave your reasons for why you thought I might not enjoy this, but as, friends of how many years has it been now, Yen?
No more than 2.
Two days?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah,
haven't known you that long.
As friends for at least 2 days. I can't believe you thought I wouldn't enjoy this. Come on, dude. I love Kong Skull Island so much after you recommended it to me.
Oh, that's true. That is true. And the
So-
monsters in Hellboy have nothing on Kong Skull Island.
Yeah.
As much as I love Kong Skull Island, the monsters in Hellboy, Mignola's monsters are like some of the best in the business.
Yeah, it's incredible. Going back again to this seahorse thing, I don't know what he must have been on something when he drew that. Like,
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. I think this man's just on another level. And it's such a different other level than some of the other creators we've talked about, where like Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore are kind of almost tapping into this ethereal level of existence.
mm-hmm.
And Mignola is just really like, I want to make something fun. I want to draw something
I want to draw a
I had fun
demon
with.
on a seahorse holding a snake tentacle staff. Sure.
Let's go for it.
Love it. So
Love-
yeah, I'm
love it.
a little disappointed, but I forgive you because this was fun.
Let me ask my question.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask your questions.
I have 2 questions, Nat, and I'm begging you, please don't answer the second question within your answer to the first question, okay?
I'll try my best.
Oh my god. Okay, do you see the value of Hellboy?
Yeah, I think, again, with my limited understanding of the comic book world, now that I've been exposed to different types of comics and different styles of comics, like I said earlier, this really came as a breath of fresh air to me. There's something so fun and simplistic and elegant about the writing and the art, but yet there is depth to the story and the characters, right? There's something so likable about Hellboy as a character. There's something complicated about his past and his history that you are excited to unearth and find out more about. But then layered over that is textures, right? You have Pancakes, this silly story, but yet again gives depth, gives texture to his history, right? In such a simple, silly story. So I love that combination of lightheartedness with gravity. And so I definitely see the value in that because I recognize now, having read multiple comics, that it's not an easy thing to do, right? We've read comics that are very heavy, very wordy, and we've read comics that are lighthearted fun, right? But to combine both and to find that sweet spot, that balance is, I think from a craft perspective, something that I can really admire in this work.
I love to hear it. And I love even more that you didn't answer the second question, which is, would you keep reading?
Apart from the fact that, as you said, it's really hard to get my hands on the physical copies because, again, you've convinced me that reading physical is a lot better than reading online. And I don't like reading on a screen anyway. Other than that, I think my answer would be yes. Maybe I will see if I can borrow some from you.
Let's go. Okay. Nat, when I'm back, let's sit down and let's watch those 2 Hellboy movies by Guillermo del Toro.
Let's do it. Maybe we'll record our watch along.
Well, that's an excellent segue to our next episode, Nat.
Yes, our next episode, very exciting. Content aside, is going to be recorded in person. I'm going to be seeing Yant in the flesh. He's going to be here in Singapore in my studio. It's going to be a grand finale to the first season of Comic Sans. And what are we going to be talking about in the next episode?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited because what we're going to read next week is another one of my favorites. And we may do something a little different.
I feel like you have a lot of favorites.
Sorry, I like things, okay?
You can like things, but not everything can be your
No,
favorite.
whatever. It doesn't, I don't care. No. What we're going to be reading next week, and I haven't decided yet, but I'm on the fence of making actually Nat watch the movie as well.
What?
We are going to be reading one of my favorite pairs of comic book and movie, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay, I've watched the movie.
Well then, you don't have to watch the movie again.
But I've not read the comic,
but-
yeah.
And I, if you've listened to the show before, you know that I have some aversion to Nat having encountered the work. But in the case of Scott Pilgrim, I almost welcome it because I think that's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am excited. So stick around for our very special episode next week.
Thanks for listening to Comic Sans, everyone, and we're going to see you on the next page.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andas Productions show hosted by Myle and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Roshan Singh Sambhi. Our cover art is by Isabel Fang and marketing by Shevon Leck. Follow us on social media at the links in the description and stay tuned for weekly releases of our 8-episode first season.